Hello guys, welcome back. I hope everyone is doing great. Today we're talking about a fragrance that I recently and finally added to my collection. I don't know why it took me so long to get a full bottle of this one. Not only is it a fragrance from one of my favorite houses, the house of Frederic Malle, it also has two of my favorite notes and fragrances, Heliotrope and Iris. So this is my bottle of L'Eau D'Hiver from the house of Frederic Malle. And as you guys know, the bottles always name the perfumer, and the nose behind L'Eau D'Hiver is Jean-Claude Ellena. The fragrance was released all the way back in 2003, so it's not a new fragrance, even though it took me so long to get a bottle of this. I did start out with one of the official samples, and I actually have a lot of samples from Frederic Malle that I would like to talk about in a video soon. And I do have full bottles of the usual suspects from the house. Portrait of a Lady, of course, Carnal Flower, Iris Poudre, because I'm such a fan of Iris, and Lipstick Rose, and there are other bottles that I would love to add. But today we're going to talk about this one. And L'Eau D'Hiver was inspired by a perfume from the house of Guerlain, Après. And Après is a fragrance that dates all the way back to, I think, 1906. And if you look at the Frederic Malle website, they do have a little blurb about how this fragrance was inspired by Après, which has similarities. And Après translates to after the rain, and L'Eau d'Hiver translates to water of winter. So both fragrances are definitely referencing something watery. Maybe that's something melancholy, and maybe it's something about the florals that are supposed to be wet and dewy, and flowers that you're smelling after a rainfall. And when I spray the two fragrances side by side, I get how Après was sort of the inspiration behind L'Eau d'Hiver. And L'Eau d'Hiver is described as a conceptual redesign of Après. It's supposed to be all about this interplay between this anisic aldehyde and this almondy vanillic heliotrope, as well as orris. So that's what L'Eau d'Hiver is described as. And I'm wearing it as my scent of the day. I really enjoy wearing this. I went through the entire decant before I purchased this full bottle, but I knew, just from the note listing and the descriptions, I knew that I could safely blind buy this, but I did buy a whole bunch of Frederic Malle samples, and at the same time, I ended up ordering one of L'Eau d'Hiver, and the minute I sprayed it, I thought, oh, this is absolutely stunningly beautiful. And L'Eau d'Hiver is an EDT, it's an eau de toilette concentration, but I would say, in my opinion, it performs like an eau de parfum. So it's a surprise because I expected this to be a light-wearing, sort of delicate fragrance that would disappear after an hour or two, and that is not the case whatsoever. I still get wafts of it. I just sprayed this about 2 hours ago, and I wore it as my scent of the day. But as I usually do in my videos, we are going to spray it again and talk about what this smells like. And the spray action is really quite dispersive. A lot comes out on skin with just one spray. It's so beautiful. This opens up fresh, musky, ethereal, delicate, almost melancholy. It's so lavender. That's the color that I get. It could be the power of suggestion. I think heliotrope, I think lavender, purplish, but I say lavender because it's a little more delicate than purple. Even though heliotrope can be blue and can be white, in my mind, it's a light, powdery lavender. So this does open up fresh and ethereal, and I absolutely love the opening. Well, I love the fragrance as it develops and in the dry down as well. I would say that L'Eau d'Hiver has a little bit of movement twice. After a few minutes of having it on skin, I start to get the sort of unique aspects of the heliotrope. I get that almondy, sort of nutty component. It's a little powdery. I absolutely love that part of heliotrope, that aspect of heliotrope and fragrance. And there's also, like in Après, there is a note of hawthorn, which is a flowering tree shrub that's in the family of rose. So I only know that because I read it. I've never actually smelled hawthorn, but it is described as having qualities that are a little floral, a little sweet, maybe even a little honey-like. So maybe that's giving this fragrance a little bit of sweetness. There's nothing honey-like in L'Eau D'Hiver to my nose, but there is a hint of sweetness, just a tiny, tiny hint that goes along with this almondy, sort of soft, powdery floral that has a fluffiness to it. That's what I love about this as well. It's never transparent. It's never super translucent like watercolor. It's not a fragrance that I would describe as a brush of watercolor where you can sort of see through the transparency of the watercolor. This has a little more denseness, even though it's a light wearing, airy fragrance. It's not totally translucent and transparent in my mind. There's a fluffiness to it. There's a powderiness to it. And that's what I really like about this one. I'm not crazy about fragrances that are musky and too translucent and sort of too watery. And speaking about watery, there is something dewy about the floral aspect in here. There is something watery that sort of comes to mind as the fragrance develops and it gets closer to the dry down. It's as if you have a dewy sort of heliotrope flower in your hands after the rain. And with this sort of comes this aroma that has a hint of sweetness. It's just really pretty and delicate and ethereal. And like I said, it's lavender in color. And what I learned about the fragrance, the more I wore it and got to know it, the first time I sprayed this wasn't even sort of obvious to me. But the more I got to know the fragrance and the more I experienced it throughout the day, I wore this to work a whole bunch last week actually. What I learned about the fragrance is that as it continues to develop, after the heliotrope sort of gives you that almondy warmth with a little bit of nuttiness to this delicate powdery floral, I get something green in here, and the green is fresh. The green is like a fresh cut grass almost, as if you would take a piece of grass and sort of crush it between your fingers. Something dewy, something fresh, and it's actually quite apparent in the dry down, which is what I think makes this completely and totally unisex. And it keeps L'Eau D'Hiver from going into this full-on powdery, floral, ultra feminine direction. I think that there's this fresh green aspect that comes in as a backdrop to the fragrance, and I get it throughout the dry down that makes this unisex in my opinion, and not ultra feminine and not ultra floral. So it's never too floral, it's never too powdery, it's never too sweet, it's never too musky. It's just a lovely, lovely fragrance. And I do see the connection to Après. Now, I did have the opportunity to get one of those bee bottles, the bell-shaped bottles of Après. I think that those were the bottles right before they put them in to these shaped bottles. And from my research, I read that this was not a reformulation and that they smell pretty much the same. So I didn't bother, but I would love to get one of those bottles just because they look so nice. But back to L'Eau D'Hiver, I can't see the connection. I do see the connection. I have sprayed them side by side. Après also has that hawthorn note. It has violet, it has iris, and a few other notes as well. But to my nose, Après is less sweet, it's less fluffy, and I feel like it's even less floral. I feel like L'Eau D'Hiver has a more substantial floral heart that's a little bit more powdery, and it definitely has that almondy, sort of nutty warmth that comes along with the heliotrope. So I really never wear this. This one to me is more musky and more translucent and transparent. I'm sure if I got my nose on some older, super vintage version, this is probably absolutely stunning. But as it stands right now, I enjoy wearing this one more, and I do wear it more, even though there's no dent, and I haven't really had the chance to wear it enough to put a dent in this fragrance. It's something that I would reach for more than I would reach for Après L'Onde, which to me is a more musky fragrance. I enjoy something like this that has a little bit of depth and denseness to it. So in the full dry down, what I get from L'Eau D'Hiver is a floral that's met with green, and it's fresh green. It's not a dark green like a patchouli or anything of that sort, or moss. It's nothing like that, but it's never overtaking the heliotrope and the iris combination in here. It never overtakes that powdery, delicate floral component, never overtakes the warmth that you get that's a little bit nutty and a little sweet, but a warm sweet, nothing sugary in the fragrance whatsoever. It never overtakes that, but it's the backdrop. And the wafts that I was getting off my skin hours later when this dried down made me realize that this performs, to my surprise, pretty well for an EDT. In my mind, eau de toilettes are sort of light-wearing fragrances that don't have longevity or great longevity, but this one has great longevity. It was projecting off my skin for hours well into the dry down, and I like the way it's met with this fresh green aspect, but I like that the green is only about 30% of the fragrance as it dries down. It's not overtaking the part that I love, and that's the delicate heliotrope / iris combination in this. So all in all, L'Eau D'Hiver is a fragrance that I personally love to wear, like Iris Poudre. I love fragrances that have powderiness, even though this is different from that one. I love fragrances that are powdery, ethereal, cozy. I like fragrances that feature heliotrope. This one has a dewy nature to it as well. And so I would say that the name L'Eau D'Hiver seems to be fitting because the florals in here, like the florals in Après L'Onde, are dewy and wet and picked after the rainfall. And this fragrance and the florals in this fragrance and the nuances you get with the florals in the fragrance are absolutely stunning, especially for someone like me who is a big fan of the powdery iris and heliotrope in fragrances. So that is my take on Frederic Malle's L'Eau D'Hiver. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this and what you think of the comparison between this and Après L'Onde, if you've smelled that fragrance, if you own the modern version like the bottle that I have here. And as soon as I get the chance, I will be uploading a video talking about some samples that I have from the House of Frederic Malle. I love the House of Frederic Malle. I enjoy a lot of their fragrances, and I do plan to add some more to my collection. As always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time. Bye, guys.